Hello, moin moin, welcome. My name is Tim Messerschmidt. I'm Google's Developer Relations Lead in the German-speaking area. With me is my colleague Peter. And today we're going to talk about what we call actions on Google and API.ai, which are platforms to work on conversational interfaces and applications for the Google Assistant. Before we get started, because we just left lunch break, and I hope you all had amazing lunch, I would like you to ask, just to get up, please. I like you yawning. So we're going to do a little exercise. Wow, microphone is sensible. So we're going to do a very little nice exercise. I would like you to wave your hand 8 times with me once I start doing it. Then the right leg 8 times. Right hand 8 times, left leg 8 times, then 4 each, 2 each, 1 each. And afterwards, you're going to give me your most fearsome hero posture. Something that you think, if you think about a superhero, that is that posture for you. So we're going to start on 3, and Peter is hopefully joining us.
I will.
All right, 3, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 1. All right, awesome, thank you. So if you ever do public speaking, you literally just helped us be less afraid of public speaking, because now we feel amazing. This practice actually gives you lots of adrenaline, and people feel amazing once they do that. So thank you.
All right, cool. So my name is Peter. I'm a developer advocate at Google. I am one of the very few DAs who work out of the out of the Hamburg office. I used to work in the London office, but now I'm back in Hamburg. And got to appreciate a hot cup of tea because of the weather. So today we're going to talk about actions on Google and how you can use artificial intelligence and voice-controlled surfaces to bring your service and your application to the millions of customers out there. So you might remember that for the past couple of years, we've been talking about the age of mobile. And maybe it was for 10 years, some people say, maybe it was less. But we've been trying to, as an industry, to move people towards mobile experiences. And now we're there, I guess. So most of you have at least one phone with you, probably more. And if you walk on the street, you will find that most people, instead of just walking around, they'll have this posture and they'll look into their phones. So I would say we are in the age of mobile. But now we're moving into an era of artificial intelligence and AI first. And why is that? So we've been doing research in the area of artificial intelligence for very, very many years. But now that we've got so many computer surfaces around us all of the time, this really becomes useful and usable all of the time. So we've got our phones with us. We've got computers in TV kits. We've got computers in speakers. We've got them in our watches. And we've got them in cars. So everywhere you go, there's a chance that there's at least one computer that you can use to do something. So computing becomes really ubiquitous. And the Google Assistant is your way, your platform, to really make use of those surfaces and get users into having a conversation with your service, with your brand, with your application. So when we talk about the Google Assistant, most people think that the Google Assistant is one of those speaker devices. And let me tell you, you couldn't be further from the truth, because for sure, speakers are one surface that you can use. But if you just imagine how many speakers you could possibly put out there, if you would give one speaker, or maybe 2 speakers, or 3 speakers to every household out there, you'd have a very limited number of speakers out there. But so many people have phones. In fact, with the Google Assistant being available on Android and on iOS and on speakers, we have a reach of more than several 100 million users. And these are the users that you can reach by speakers by putting something out on Android and iOS. So the Google Assistant is this kind of conversation that the user has with Google and third-party integrations. And Actions on Google is how you can build those third-party integrations. And we're going to walk you through how to do this today. And you'll learn how to build your first action integration later on. So to give you an overview of how that looks like, I'm going to run this video for you, which shows how you would interact with a third-party integration that is basically a recipe finder. Oops, sorry. Once more.
Okay, Google, let me talk to Personal Chef.
Sure, here's Personal Chef. Hi, I'm your personal chef. What are you in the mood for?
Well, it's kind of cold outside, so I'd like something to warm me up, like a hot soup, and I want it fast.
All right, what protein would you like to use?
I have some chicken and also some canned tomatoes.
Okay, well, I think you should try the chicken tomato soup recipe I found on example.com.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, so there are a couple of things that you saw. So first of all, Wayne talked to the speaker and said, okay, Google, let me talk to Personal Chef. So he invoked the third-party action by saying, let me talk to, and then the name of the action. So the name of the application is Personal Chef. And then you might have noticed that the voice changed. So first of all, you had the voice of Google, and then you had a different voice. And that was the voice of the third-party action. And you can choose from 4 voices for each language that we support. So you can use 2 male voices and 2 female voices, and they sound slightly different. So you've got a little bit of choice there. You can also pre-record audio. So if you've got a voice actor, then you can use that to play back MP3 files. And you also notice there was this little ding. So he said, talk to Personal Chef. And then Google said, OK, let me get Personal Chef. And then there was ding, which is an earcon, similar to icon. So that indicates the conversation transfers from Google to your third-party action. And then at the end again, he also said goodbye. And then there was a ding, and the conversation went back to Google. So in terms of how does the integration itself work? So once you say, OK, Google, let me talk to Personal Chef, or let me talk to whatever name your action might have, we know that we need to fetch your application. And then this is the invocation trigger. So we fetch your application, and control transfers to your application. And whatever the user says next will be transferred into your application. So if the user says, I would like to eat a hot soup, then you will get a string which says, I would like to have a hot soup. This is the string you get in your action, in your application. And you can do whatever you need to do with that. You can look for a recipe. You could translate that to a different language. Do whatever you want to do with that. And then you produce a response that you send back to the user. So usually you would look for a recipe and say, we've got this nice recipe for tomato soup, and here's how to do it. And you produce a string, send that back to the user. So if we have a look again at this sentence that Wayne said, you'll notice it's a pretty complicated sentence, and like the content in there is very convoluted. So there are a lot of words, but the only words that really matter are hot, soup, fast, and chicken and tomatoes. So how do we parse this? Could you imagine writing a regular expression that allows you to parse this kind of sentences? I wouldn't. So, and the user might be saying anything. Also, they might not be saying all the relevant pieces. So they might say, I want a soup. And in order to find a recipe, you need to know the vegetables they want to use or the meat and stuff. So you have to be able to parse those sentences. So in order to relieve you from the burden of having to write your own regular expression parser or writing some sort of parser, we have this tool which we call API.ai, which is a machine learning driven platform which allows us to basically parse any kind of text and derive intents and entities. Intents basically are the user's intent, what they want to do. And entities are things like temperature, the vegetables, meat, anything else. So the domain attributes, if you will. And this is how it looks like in the developer console. And Tim is going to walk you through how this looks like in a real demo to give you an impression of how it works like.
All right, thank you, Peter. That's actually still yours.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so we're doing it for the first time around. So let me give you an architectural overview. So if you have a look at what the user says, they say, okay, Google, talk to personal chef. So we'll take their voice input, take it into the platform, which you see here with the green bubbles, and then turn it into text. Deliver this text to your action, which runs on API.ai, which is the orange speech bubble, which will then map onto an intent, execute the intent, and return speech to the user. So for the second part of the conversation, where the user says, well, it's kind of cold outside, we can see that we do the speech-to-text transition, do the natural language processing, and then we go into the backend. So on this slide, we're using Google Cloud, but you could run it on Amazon, you could run it on your own server, you could run it on Heroku, anything you like. So as long as you can access your backend by using some sort of web interface, a webhook basically. So we'll send JSON in, and you can work on the JSON and then deliver the results. And now we go into the demo.
All right, awesome. So we're going to leave the presentation for a few seconds. And what we're going to do is we're going to dive into API.ai. So when I start API.ai, you will notice that it actually opens my agent, which is pretty much the integration that I have in order to do stuff. In my example, I have a smart weather station at home called NetAtmo. And I'm really, I want to know what the humidity is in my basement, or what temperature my bedroom has right now. And I can actually integrate that. So what we do is, Peter already mentioned there are intents and entities. So we're going to look into them before actually going into the test console and giving it a try. So I created a new intent that I call the NetAtmo intent. And the name doesn't really matter because you're not going to refer this by the name over here. What you do is you can assign a so-called action name for it, which you can imagine as a way to identify the action, the intent, against your webhook. So if I call this, for instance, the temperature action, that's fine. And I'm good to go with that. So let's save this. And you see that there is a bunch of different user says phrases over there. So those are different ways to ask about humidity or temperature in my house. So for instance, I can ask, what's the humidity in my bedroom? And what I have over here are two different kind of parameters that I want to fill. I have the type, which is humidity in my case, and the room, like where do I actually want to measure the humidity? So I can do that. I can define a lot of these phrases over here, and that's fine. And you will notice that the action actually asks you for the parameters, the entities. And I can make them either required, or in the case that we've seen before with Personal Chef, I can actually ask for them afterwards. So I can do what we call prompts and say, all right, you told me you want to have a chicken soup, but do you want to have it warm or cold? Or do you want any other vegetables with it? And I can say, all right, I want to have vegetables with that. Or you know what, I'm actually good. So that really helps you to have that nice conversational experience instead of having to pre-fill everything. Once I do that, I simply define that I want to use a webhook, and that's good. So going into entities, you will notice that I just have 2 entities defined, which in my case is bedroom, basement, and living room. But people actually don't tend to stick to the same names for stuff over and over again. So basement, you could actually also say cellar, or a living room, I call it downstairs. And I should be able to actually say, what's the temperature downstairs without having to say, oh yeah, sorry, that's the wrong parameter name. It's living room, of course. So you can define synonyms, and you can actually also, and that's a feature that I really like, is you can enable automated learning, which actually fills more and more of those synonyms. Because normally as a developer, I don't think about every way to say everything correctly, and users might have different preferences, and I should be able to cater towards that. So the feature that we offer over here is called training. So throughout time, users hopefully use your app, and you will actually see how they use, in my case, the temperature sensors. So I can actually map what they say towards my existing entities and make the machine learning model that lies beyond this much smarter, so that the user experience actually gets better and better without me having to redeploy an application or anything like that over and over again. So that makes the whole integration very easy and nice to use. And before we go to the integration, you see, I just have a very simple webhook. It needs to be HTTPS enabled for security reasons. And what I do is I use Cloud Functions for Firebase. I have a fairly simple snippet of JavaScript that uses the NetAtmo module. In my case, that just runs Node.js, because this is actually, it returns simple post requests and just some JSON. You could integrate with anything on the backend. The SDK that we're going to look at is actually written for Node. So I have my webhook over here, and now I can actually go to the integration and give this a try. So you see, I can define different things like what's the welcome intent. If I want to talk to, we've seen it before, personal chef, it should say something like, hey, this is personal chef. How can I help you? You can do that. You can also say, I require my users to sign in. So that way actually allows me, if you think about an app for, let's say, My Taxi, I could actually ask for the user's location right away, and I can add that context as well. So I defined that I want to use the NetAtmo intent, and now I go to the test console. All right, let's do that. So we have a fairly simple simulator that allows you to actually see what's going on. So I'm going to say, talk to my test app. That's how you invoke test apps over here.
All right, here's the test version of my test app.
Hey, code.talks.
Cool. So let's ask it about the temperature. What's the temperature in my basement?
The temperature is 21.7 degrees Celsius. Anything else you'd like to know?
How about the humidity in my living room?
The humidity is 58%. Anything else you'd like to know?
So you can see, let me just end that. So you can see I'm mapping all the requests and responses over here. So debugging is actually fairly easy. I can see, for instance, that the parameters are submitted. I can see which surface I've selected. So I can actually test against a speaker, or I could test against phones. I can set different languages, so I can see what experience my users have. And I can even set a location. So again, if we think about stuff like a taxi application, I could actually debug that with the web simulator, and it's fairly easy. But the same thing actually works with physical devices, so let's give this a try.
The microphone is back on.
Hey Google, talk to my test app.
Okay, getting the test version of my test app. Hey, code.talks.
What's the temperature in my basement?
The temperature is 21.7 degrees Celsius. Anything else you'd like to know?
Exit. So you see, it's actually fairly easy to... It just tells me that the microphone is muted, which is actually very smart, talking about Google Assistant all the time. All right, so what this really does is it tells us that it's actually fairly easy to integrate against all these different surfaces. And really what we can do over here is debug the whole experience fairly easy. And if you've noticed, the accent of the simulator was actually different to the Google Home device, because Google Home in this case is actually set to British, whereas the simulator in my case was actually set to have American English. Now, to actually create that webhook, as I mentioned before, you could either just use the post request, check out the body and extract the parameters, like in my case, the room and what kind of type, humidity or temperature you want to have. Or you could use the Node.js client library, which integrates against API.ai, but it also actually allows you to do your own fulfillment. So if you say that you want to do your own natural language processing and text-to-speech and speech-to-text and all these things, you can. But really the benefit of API.ai is it takes care of all these things for you. So what I do over here is literally create a response handler. So whenever a user actually does an interaction with the assistant, I know what's going on. And I want to make sure that I map these actions. And I mentioned that before when I showed you the intents, that I map it against the action name. So I know exactly when I do a temperature request, I have to do a certain thing. Whereas if I do a humidity request, I have to do another thing. And you can see afterwards, I literally just use two different functions, ask and tell, to interact with the user. Ask allows the user to actually enter additional details. So if we talk about personal chef, I could say, all right, you want to have a soup? Any vegetables that should go along with it? And you say, of course, I don't know, bell peppers, and it does that. And if you simply want to do output, you use tell as a function, and that's it. And the assistant takes care of everything for you. And the nice thing is you don't have to create a new webhook for every action you have. That's why we have action mapping, which allows you to map a certain action against a certain functionality. And with that, back to Peter.
All right, so now that we've seen how easy it is to build an integration, and apparently using API.ai, you don't even have to take care of the language parsing, let's talk a little bit about how you can make this a really good experience for your users. So you might probably have a lot of experience calling your bank or your insurance or any other instance, and you end up with a voice computer at first. So please listen closely, as our options might have changed. If you want to talk to a representative, press 1. If you want to do this, press 2, and so on and so forth. And you have to listen very closely and then wait for your option and then remember the number. So that's obviously a very bad experience. Instead, we would like users to be able to just say what they want, and also we want them to feel welcome and have the impression that they're having a very natural conversation. So for everything that your action says to the user, you should make sure that there's a variety. So for example, for the welcome intent, and let's just make up that the Cinemax had an action. So if they had an action and it would welcome you and it would say, hello, welcome to Cinemax, how can I help you? And the next time you come and use the action and it says, hello, welcome to Cinemax, how can I help you? And then you use it for the third time. Hello, welcome to Cinemax, how can I help you? It gets boring, right? Because it's always the same. So you should make sure that even the welcome intent uses different welcome phrases, and the answers have a variety as well. So that's really important. Sometimes you want to specify that the voice output that you use is very specific. So for example, you might have numbers in there, and sometimes you want those numbers to be pronounced as an ordinal. Sometimes you want them pronounced as a cardinal. So we support SSML, which is short for Speech Synthesis Markup Language, and you can use this to basically say, so this is a number, or this is an abbreviation, or these are characters. So instead of this example up there, instead of saying SML, it would pronounce it as SSML. So that's really useful. And the real power comes in where you are using the audio tag. So you can basically just refer to an MP3 file, which you can play back to the user. So you could imagine, just imagine you were to program an action for Nespresso. And instead of using the synthesized voice, you would have an agreement with their brand ambassador, so George Clooney. And you would ask him to do a couple of pre-recordings, and then you would refer to those pre-recordings. And instead of a synthetic voice greeting the user for your action, you would actually have the voice of George Clooney talking to the user. And this provides a really great experience. So think about that. You should also cater for return visitors. So if you're using an action over and over again, you want to be greeted as a part of the family, basically. And it's nice if the action says, okay, welcome back, so-and-so, to this action. So pay attention to that as well. And we support, via our client library, how to find out that there's actually a returning visitor. So you can just basically read the user attribute and find out what's their ID. And finally, let's talk a little bit about surfaces. So we told you that the speaker is just one surface and that phones are a surface as well, which is very powerful. So here are a couple of things you can do with those surfaces. So for example, you can use just regular speech bubbles, as you see here, or you could use what we call suggestion chips. It's a little bit hard to read, so basically it's the line highlighted in green. So these are numbers that the user might want to say in this conversation. And instead of just saying them, the user can also tap on any number and then speed up the conversation because they see immediately what's going on. And you know, it's quicker to read than to hear. And also, when you read stuff, it's easier to pause. So make use of that as well. You can also display cards with images and animated GIFs. So that's pretty nice. And as you can see, there is limited capabilities for formatting text even. And there are carousels and lists. So it's, you know, you've got pretty rich capabilities to build really nice UIs. So in terms of how users can actually find your action, there's one really, really important thing I want to hammer home. The user does not have to install an action in order to be able to use it. They can just walk up to any home device. They can just use their phone. They can use an Android phone. They can use an iPhone to talk to any action that's been deployed out there. So once you write your action, submit it for review, and it passes the review, your action is live out there for the users to use. They don't have to install it. But how will they know about it? So as with any service that you publish, as with any website, you'll have to advertise for it. So make it known to users. And in addition, we've got this directory. So users who are curious, they can just basically go into their assistant app on the phone, and then there's a button. They click on the button, and it goes into the directory. We call it directory and not the App Store because it's not really a store. It's just like a listing of all the actions that are available. And then you can go in there and you can say, okay, this sounds interesting. Let me talk to this action. And then you can just like start using it. You can also link to your directory entry from just about anywhere. So if you, I don't know, if you're talking to your friends on WhatsApp or whatever, and you want to tell them about this very cool action that you built, just copy a link, send it to them, and then they can click on it and just start using it right away. Policies are important. So just to give you a quick rundown of it, so everything applies that applies to common sense. So no drugs, no pornography, no hate speech. At the moment, you can't target your app at children below the age of 13. just the regular stuff. And there is a lot more to say about that, which is outlined in detail on our webpage. So just go to developers.google.com/actions/distribute/general-policies. Okay, cool.
Awesome. So before we end this talk, I quickly want to talk about an aspect that we didn't mention before. We as developers, we often tend to think that we can simply use our existing applications and forms and map them one-to-one to those conversational experiences. But if you think about a form that requires you to fill in 5, 6, 7 fields and provide a password and all these things, that is already annoying on a laptop like here. But it's really, really annoying if you read out a form with 6 different things via a speaker like that. So instead of forcing our users to learn the syntax of our assistant app, of the action, we should actually engage the user by learning how to speak like humans. And those are 3 things that we noticed that really work. Depending on your experience, we can actually help you create tone, create different phrases, be funny or not, have a certain technique to make sure people really recognize your brand. So in case of Google, we could be a bit more colorful and nerdy. In case of a bank, probably not. And you can actually do that. People tend to think about conversations as regular conditions. So if else, if greeted, then do this, if context, then that. But that's not quite how it works. So what we recommend if you actually want to build these actions is stage a conversation with friends, with colleagues, and write down how you would actually talk to them. So map conversations and then try to actually put that into API.ai or in your own implementation. Don't try to simply go through a nice structured tree. And then finally, error handling is rather difficult because what you want to avoid is actually saying, sorry, I don't understand you. There is a lot of different reasons why the action might fail, like background noise, like the person hesitating, changing their mind, and all these different things that can lead to what you would recognize as an error. But really, why people use your app is because they have an intent, and we don't want to disappoint them by telling them, sorry, you've done something that's really wrong, you've messed up. So be a bit more elegant in error handling and try to kind of work around that by asking them for additional input, or if they would mind to repeat it. And that makes a whole different story. So how do we get started? From a design perspective, we've put down a bunch of really useful resources over here. So if you just go to that URL, you will find a nice poster that you could print out, a lot of different advice for UI and UX for conversational experiences. If you would like to, if you're more the type that likes watching videos, we have 3 really amazing videos to get you started. And then finally, there are code labs. So if you would like to get your first integration going, that's where I would recommend you to go. And with that, we would like to thank you for your attention and are really looking forward to your questions. Thanks.
Achso, mich einfach das hier, genau.
Ist noch aus.
Das können wir auch nicht mitnehmen. Hallo? Jo, ich glaube, wenn ihr jetzt Fragen stellt, dann stellt sie einfach mal laut. Mit dem Kabel wird es ein bisschen schwierig, bis da hochzulatschen. Gibt's Fragen? Ist gerade schwierig, was zu sehen. Ja, da oben?
Beides gut.
Oh, sorry, I was talking in German, so I think English is better.
Is there some way that from your side you can determine different users over the same surface? So you can say, for example, you have like 5 people sitting around the HomePod, they want to do a game, and then you automatically determine, okay, by voice, that's that person. Or you can at least identify, okay, that's not the same person asking some question. Or is that just like you have a string and then it's just, okay, I don't know where that came from, but I mean, that's completely different context if there is another person.
Okay, so the question was, can you determine different speakers inside of your action once you are in the action, correct? So on Google Home, we support speaker detection, so you can set up different speakers or profiles for your household. So for example, if I talk to the device and ask,
microphone is back on.
okay, Google, what's my name?
Your name is my master.
Did you hear that? So you can teach it your name, and if my son walks up to it, it says his name, and so on and so forth. And if I ask it to play stuff on Spotify, it will play my playlist or his playlist if he's speaking. But once you are in an action, all you get is the string. So we don't provide you with audio signal. We don't provide you with anything else than just the raw string that we translated from what the user said. So at the moment, unfortunately, the answer to your question is no. You can't determine different speakers within your action. But it's a good suggestion, especially with the game. I'll make sure to talk to the product team.
Thanks.
Ja.
Ich spreche auch Deutsch, alles gut.
Nur für die anderen Leute dazu. Bei dem ersten Beispiel, was ihr gebracht habt, mit ich hätte gerne, mir ist kalt, aber ich hätte gerne eine warme Suppe. Gibt es irgendwie eine Möglichkeit, dass mir die API dabei hilft, eine Wahrscheinlichkeit zu errechnen, inwiefern ich von einer warmen Suppe und nicht von einer kalten Suppe spreche?
Ich antworte erst auf Deutsch und dann, and then I switch to English. So just to repeat the question in English first. The question is, if I provide two different parameters that are actually the same, like talking about a soup, and I say, I feel cold, but I want a warm soup, you would have 2 times the same parameter, pretty much, right? And the question was, is there a way to actually determine the probability of what is meant? Die Antwort ist, ja. Wir haben einen sogenannten Confidence-Parameter da drin, der für dich schon mal quasi die Vorentscheidung macht. Du kriegst trotzdem immer noch den Input-String. Sollte also aus irgendeinem Grund API.ai daneben liegen, könntest du das selber feststellen. Aber normalerweise wissen wir zum Beispiel, wenn du sagst, ich möchte gerne eine warme Suppe mit Tomate, dann ist es halt klar, es wird eine solche Suppe. Aber du sagst zum Beispiel, ich möchte eine kalte Suppe mit Tomate, dann wäre es vielleicht eine Gazpacho. Also theoretisch könntest du es machen, aber die Chance ist höher, dass die Suppe immer wärmer wäre in dem Fall. Also von daher ja. So the answer is yes, there's a confidentiality score that API.ai provides you, and if that doesn't work for you, we actually provide you the raw string as well. Thank you.
All right, cool. Are there any other questions? So far, no?
It's really hard to see people over
yeah,
here.
that's true. I think it's because it's so wide. I have a question. It's, if I write some commands or I write an app or whatever, and it's in the assistant right now. How do you do the command? You say the app or the commands? My question is there a possibility that I could overwrite some other commands?
So every name is a unique name, which means Personal Chef would be unique to the whole Google Assistant universe. But if for some reason you have a preference to call it different, you can actually assign it a different name, and you can create shortcuts within the Google Home app. So I have this small vacuum cleaner robot called Nito, and you would invoke it saying, tell Nito robot to start cleaning. But what I really want to do is say, okay, Google, start cleaning, right? I can do that. I can create a shortcut for that, and I don't need to say, tell Nito robot to start cleaning. Every invocation for those action names is always at least 2 words. So you cannot just override something and say, you hijack Logitech or so.
Okay, so you can personally override your system, but I can't, as a developer, override other.
Exactly, you cannot hijack other apps.
Yeah, okay, good.
And that's actually an interesting point. So if you are a brand, then you can have a 1-word invocation. So for example, okay, Google, talk to Nespresso. That would totally work. But if you are, for example, a coffee shop and you're just a random coffee shop, then you would not be able to reserve the word, a 1-word invocation. So it would have to be a 2-word invocation at least, or more words as well.
Okay. So otherwise you could, I don't know, use a word like coffee shop, a regular word, and nobody else can use it. For example.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
That is what the policy team does as well. So they literally just take the invocation phrase, if it's just a one-word invocation, they put it into the search bar, and then they see if the term pops up as one of the first couple of results. And if so, that's a pretty strong indicator that this actually is a brand. And if it doesn't appear, then they'll have to do further research.
Okay. Yeah, there's another question.
How do you handle, I mean, you talked about using different kinds of like Spotify and, I don't know, different parts of home, smart home devices. I'm not really sure how that works. And in my case, I would think about maybe if you have a web service and you need to log into that, if the assistant action is live in the Google and everybody can use this, how do you log into your web service? I mean, does it show up on your smart home? Hey, please put in your web service login.
Yeah. So the question is, how can you make sure that if you have a service that user needs to sign into in order to connect to their account, how can you make this work on the assistant?
Yeah.
So the answer is we support what's called account linking. So if you talk to a speaker and say, okay, Google, talk to, and let me use an example that actually exists, talk to Todoist, the to-do list application. Okay, Google, talk to Todoist. Then it will say, oh, it looks like your Todoist account is not linked yet. Please go to the Google Home application on your phone and link your account. And then you go into the Home application, there is a little chip, you tap on the chip, and then you'll be shelled out into the sign-in flow of Todoist. They will ask you, okay, please sign in using your account, and that will link your Todoist account to your Google account, and then the next time around you talk to the device, it will know that it's you. If you're doing this on a phone, so you use your phone and say, okay, Google, talk to Todoist, it will also say, it looks like your account has not been linked yet, and you will see the little chip in there as well, and you tap on the chip, and from there it's the same flow.
And you can integrate with pretty much anything that has an OAuth endpoint. So pretty much all the regular identity providers as well.
So there's one question left. It's there, up there. Yeah?
I would like to know when it will be possible to code in German, so actions in German, because at least 2 weeks ago that was not possible.
Yep. So the question is, when will you be able to use German for voice input and output? The answer is really, really soon.
Is there any possibility to subscribe for that info? Only that info?
There's actually a Twitter account @actions on Google. I would recommend following that. Yeah. Or if you want to follow me on Twitter, you will probably see it as well. But yeah,
it's
very soon.
So, but it's not 1 year or something?
No, it's literally very, very soon.
Yeah. And if you want to get started now, you can go to API.ai and start building your intents and play around with that, because that already supports additional languages in addition to English. So it supports French, German, and so on and so forth.
Oh, you can
try it in their simulator. And then once we go live with the German developer platform, you'll be able to connect the two. And also, we'll support multi-language agents. So you'll be able to write an agent, one action that supports both English, German, and other languages.
So if you go to API.ai, just to give you a very quick tour, you will actually see that it allows you to test all your actions without actually integrating against the assistant. So you can even use different target platforms. So
it's in the top right corner there.
Let's hope I didn't mess up. See, so you actually see that, and you even see the JSON that's being generated. So you can play around with that already, even without owning a Google Home device, or even without integrating against Actions on Google.
All right.
All right.
Many thanks. It was a great talk, and many thanks for the questions. And yeah, big applause.
Thanks.